Hey, it's your buddy Jeff. Thanks for joining me today on Backroads Tourist. I'm heading to Concordia, Kansas to do a story on something that I never knew about. How did I live this long and never hear about this before? You may have never heard of this either. It's a story that's going to fascinate you. It's probably going to make you happy. It's probably going to make you sad. And it's probably going to leave you with a lot of questions and maybe even make you want to do some more research into this. We're going to take a visit to the National Orphan Train Museum in Concordia. In the 1850s, it's estimated there were about 30,000 homeless children in New York City. Now, to put that in perspective, New York City's total population was about 600,000 people. At the time, there were no real social service programs to help them, so these children lived on the streets, slept in alleys, and did whatever they could to survive, including getting involved in crime. If children were caught and arrested, they were thrown into jails and prisons with adults. Many children were homeless because they were orphans. Others had run away from abusive situations. Some were there because their parents simply couldn't afford to have another mouth to feed. In 1853, a young minister named Charles Loring Brace founded the Children's Aid Society. This organization started offering shelter, skill training, education, religious guidance, and job placement for homeless children, but they were soon overwhelmed by the extreme number of children needing help. That's when he developed the idea of the orphan train. The West and Midwest was opening up, and families in rural areas needed extra hands to work the farms and ranches. Brace believed that the children would be better off if they were removed from the poverty and debauchery of the big cities and were raised by morally upright farm families. In 1854, the first groups of children left New York City for their new lives in the Midwest. For the next 75 years, trains would deliver homeless children to new families all over the country, as well as in Mexico and Canada. Official estimates are that about 200,000 children were placed with new families with the orphan trains, but when I talked to people at the museum, they told me that due to the success of the program with the Children's Aid Society, other organizations started doing the same thing, and they didn't share their numbers with one another, so the actual number is probably closer to 300,000. If you're finding this interesting, please subscribe to the Backroads Tourist channel. I do a lot of interesting stories about amazing places like this one, and I'd like to share them with you. And I'd also appreciate it if you'd give this video a thumbs up just to help it get recommended to others. Usually towns of under 3,000 people were selected, and notices were put in their newspapers letting families know that the orphan train would be arriving on a certain date. Ideally, prospective families would be vetted by local officials or churches, but that wasn't always the case. When the train arrived, there would be a crowd waiting. It was a spectacle. The children would be taken to a local opera house or other gathering spot and put on display. They might recite a poem or sing a song to make themselves seem more appealing. Then families would come along and select the child or children that they wanted. Now, I was told that the children had the right to decline a family if they wanted to, but this didn't happen very often. Some families would also contact the Children's Aid Society, telling them what kind of child they were looking for. They'd tell the age, gender, hair color, eye color, and any other specifics. The society would then do their best to try to fit the requirements and send that child to their prospective family. Small groups of children and an adult guardian or agent would then be put on the train and sent off to a new life. They were given fresh clothing and a Bible. They weren't allowed to take any photos or items from their previous life. Once placed into a family, the children were expected to send letters to the society twice each year, and the society representatives would visit the family once a year to check on conditions. However, with so many children and so few representatives, this didn't always happen. For their part, families were expected to treat the children as part of the family and give them decent food and clothing as well as an education. If a home didn't work out, the children would be placed with another family. Babies were the easiest to find homes for. Children 14 and older were the hardest. It was also difficult to find homes for children who were sickly and physically or mentally disabled. And despite the name, many of the children on the orphan train weren't orphans. About 25% have both parents still living, but the families just couldn't care for them. The museum in Concordia has 3 buildings filled with artifacts, including this train car that represents the kind of conditions a child may have experienced as they traveled to their new home. Of course, there were criticisms of the orphan trains. There were lawsuits, new laws passed, and numerous problems. But there were success stories too. Throughout Concordia, Kansas, you can find statues dedicated to the orphan train riders and read about their stories. The museum also has a small gift shop with several books available if you'd like to learn more about the orphan trains. The last run of the orphan train was in 1929. Today, few, if any, of the original riders are still alive, but it's estimated there are over 2 million direct descendants of orphan train children, and that number is growing every day. The Orphan Train Museum has a wonderful website with more information, history, and stories, and I'll leave a link to it in the description of this video. So what do you think? How does this story make you feel? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for joining me on my visit to the Orphan Train Museum in Concordia, Kansas. I'm Jeff, and I'll see you on the back roads.